Hi everyone. Yeah, I thought I'd make another video to just show these cameras again, talk a bit more about the lenses, and also to improve the lighting, so hopefully you can see the colors a bit better. So this is the grey M2 in a grey paint finish, and Leica did originally make some Leica M2s in a grey paint finish back in the 1950s. They were sent to military, so there weren't very many made. So this is not original, obviously, but a replica. But still, the paint finish is quite nice, like a matte grey finish. And I've custom put some leather, kind of matching to the grey. On the M3, this is also some ostrich leather that's been put on there, half brown and half black, so I've kind of custom did this myself, but and the back there as well, so cut the leather, which isn't an easy process, but can be, I guess, nice result to have that leather on there. With the lenses, so hopefully you can see a bit better the Ricoh 28mm f2.8 lens. So there are a few LTM mount versions of some of the point and shoot cameras made, I think about 20 years ago now. So Ricoh did it with essentially the lens that's in the Ricoh GR film cameras, and even the Konica also did, like some the UC Hexanon 35mm f2. Minolta also did a 28mm 3.5 LTM, which is the same lens that's in the Minolta TC1 film camera. So a few of these special edition LTM lenses were made, which can be used on the Leica bodies. LTM standing for Leica Thread Mount, but with an adapter you can add these and use them on an M mount camera. So obviously will fit any Leica M camera. This Canon, this is a Canon, this is the 50mm f1.8 lens. Again, this is the screw mount, the LTM mount, but with the adapter onto the M2. This is the 1.8. Canon also made quite a few different 50mm at the time. Obviously that Canon had their own rangefinder system at the time, so they had a 50mm 1.8, there's a 50mm 1.4, which is quite well known, I think referred to as the Japanese Summilux. There's a 50mm 1.2, even the 50 0.95. That one does need to be specially modified to be used on the M mount cameras, but does exist. So and then there's some slower aperture 50mm as well, I think a 52.2 even. So all made around the same time in the 1950s. But this one, in particular, is quite good. I mean, it's quite compact for a 50mm. So size-wise, quite nice. And only weighs about 200 grams, so not too heavy. Both these lenses actually weigh about the same. The Ricoh's a little bit lighter, so you can see it's a bit thinner, but does weigh under 200 grams. The Ricoh's, beautifully made and like a nice metal build. Even the focus tab is metal. So both these lenses perform quite well. And just thought I'd show these cameras. I didn't quite show in the original video the pressure plate, but you see on the M3, when we open this up, is quite a precise fit, and this plate here is actually made from glass. So the original first batch or so of the M3 from 1954, 55 I think, had this pressure plate made out of glass. The later ones, it goes to a metal finish, which is what's on the M2, has the metal plate. Other features of this M3, this one's a double stroke, variant, so when you fire a shutter you do have to wind this twice. It also has a short, and for that reason has a shorter advance lever compared to the M2, which was single stroke, because this is a bit later than the M3. This one has the longer advance lever because that can be wound in one stroke. Having said that, you can wind a single stroke just as you would a double stroke. So you can use 2 strokes or 3 or 4, it doesn't matter, you could do 5, whatever. But you can use shorter strokes on both, but this one you do need to use at least 2 strokes to advance the frame. This one, also being the early batch, has the older shutter speeds, so they are different to what's on the M2, slightly different. It's no big deal, they both go up to 1,000th of a second. But obviously the big difference between the M2 and the M3 is the frame lines. So the M3 has the frame lines for the 50mm, the 90mm and the 135mm, whereas the M2 has frame lines for the 35mm, 50mm and 90mm. So if you're using a 50mm, definitely the M3 is a beautiful camera to use, or even a 90. But I actually don't even mind using wider lenses on it, and you can just use an external finder to sit on the cold shoe, and then use the M3. So even using a 28 is not a problem if you use the external finder to frame, especially a wider, because sometimes you don't, especially if you're zone focusing, don't need to be as precise with your focusing. So generally you're going to quickly look at the finder for the composition with the frame lines, but yeah, focusing, you're probably going to zone focus anyway, so it does make it a bit quicker, and that's why using an M3 for that, for wider lenses like a 28 or even wider, is definitely quite possible and easy to use. Sometimes even with the 35, you could kind of just use the window that's in the M3. You get more on the image with the 35mm than what's in the window that you see, but it's approximate. Essentially what you see in the window is probably about a 40mm equivalent. But again, definitely doable, probably up to 35mm to use what's actually in the rangefinder on the M3. On the M2, definitely using a 28, even though it doesn't have the frame lines, is quite easy. Really just use the whole window and you'd be fine using the 28mm on the M2. I know some people like to see the actual frame lines for 28, and if you know that's fair. So if you want that precise framing, yeah, definitely you either use an external finder on the M2, but I think it's pretty close to what you're going to see in the whole window on the M2 with the 28mm. Given this has the 0.72 magnification finder, which is used on most of Leica's cameras from the M2 onwards. There's only the M3 that had the 0.91 magnification, so it's got the higher magnification viewfinder, which is, yeah, beautiful to use, especially, yeah, with 50mm. You get a nice view, which is close to kind of real life image. But yeah, I just thought I'd show those cameras a bit more, and the lenses. Hopefully you can see them a bit clearer, and yeah, happy to answer any questions. Thanks everyone, have a good night.